Fox News contributor and the founder and editor-in-chief of LifeZette, our friend Laura Ingraham. Laura, good morning.
Hey, Laura.
Am I disappearing into the background with the black? I mean,
No.
I didn't know. I'm in Tucker's studio. I didn't realize that I'm like going to be in a different studio.
It does look like
You look fantastic.
Yeah, it looks like you're in a nightclub, but it's perfectly okay.
Seriously, another margarita, please. Thanks. Bring it over.
There you go.
Hey, Laura, I know you're an attorney. What do you think of the Supreme Court taking up this case and then allowing for the ban, the 90-day ban for people that are entering from those 6 Muslim-majority countries?
Well, it's not a complete victory for the Trump administration. It is there's good news in it, no doubt. Court will hear the entire case in the fall term, beginning in October of next year. The concurrence by Justice Thomas was really instructive. What he said, and it was joined by the new Justice Gorsuch, what he said is the idea that the Supreme Court would make up this new exception for individuals overseas who have, quote, bona fide connections to either people or entities in the United States can basically bypass the president's travel pause. Now, that's just ridiculous. The Supreme Court tried to impart its own legislative authority, which it does not have under our Constitution, onto this Trump travel pause. That wasn't what the Trump administration conceived of. So they just made that whole thing up, and now that's going to be another hurdle for judges to clear when they have to consider exigent circumstances on the part of refugees or would-be travelers to the United States from those affected countries. So that is not a win for the president on that specific outlined rule, a group of exceptions.
Because you just added that. That's the same thing John Roberts, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, added to Obamacare. He just gets out a pen and starts writing extra stuff.
Well, that's exactly why we need justices on the Supreme Court who understand their role is circumscribed by our framers. They do not have the right to conceive of new legislative demands and put them on states, localities, or the federal government. That's not how it works. If they want to be legislators, they should resign their positions and they should go run for office. But they're justices on the Supreme Court. I found that to be very disturbing. Because somebody has a relative in the United States does not override the president's supreme executive authority under our Constitution to deter any national security concerns and address them as he sees fit. So that subcategory they devised in the majority, well, that's just wrong. So Justice Thomas, my old justice, and Gorsuch are totally right on that. So that was the good news is that Justice Gorsuch seems to be just phenomenal so far.
Someone just said he is Scalia. Meanwhile, the White House, even though you could break it down and say there's some areas of concern, they look at it as momentum is going their direction. If you see the VA bill that was signed over the weekend, the fact that the Senate is taking up health care, the fact that he seems to be aggressively going after things in Syria and warning them ahead of time, it seems like we have a foreign policy very compliant with his image. But something else happened. When he decided to back out of the Paris Agreement, a lot of cities and states and a lot of mayors said, we're going to stick with the Paris deal. Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, has taken to another level. He is launching a $17 million contest to encourage liberal cities to sidestep what the Trump administration did, and that's pull back from those constraints. What's your take on that?
Imagine having that much money where you can just sponsor contests for whatever issue you care about. This is what he did on gun control. He threw a lot of money into various activist efforts. He's done this for years. This isn't surprising at all. If Michael Bloomberg wants to throw his money, out the window for these types of efforts, he can do that. I mean, it's his, I don't have any problem with that. What we need, however, is from the administration a continued national tutorial on the proper role of the federal government vis-a-vis these international institutions and international agreements that aren't treaties but could in the future impose really strict rules and regulations on American businesses that are not applicable to the Chinese or the Indians or the Indonesians. And so I just hope, given the massive activist push against what President Trump is trying to do here. I hope that we continue to see a consistent and really powerful messaging on issues such as climate change. We care about the environment and conservation efforts. I certainly do. We also have to balance that against the interests of American sovereignty, liberty, freedom, and our willingness to trade away our sovereignty to international institutions that have been very hostile to American rights and freedom in the past. So that's what they have to keep doing. Michael Bloomberg, I'm not sure what that's going to achieve, but look, if it makes him feel better, I guess let him blow the money.
Is that what the American people want? I know that's what Michael Bloomberg wants, but what does America want?
I guess don't compete in the contest.
Well, you dangle some money. You dangle money out to local and state governments, and they'll be willing to bite at anything. Look what happened with Common Core. We had a lot of states who were willing to go for that Microsoft money that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation put out there. You have to do what's best for the people of your state, regardless of whether you're going to get $100 grand or $1 million from someone like Bloomberg.
But what can 17 million buy you anyway?
I don't think it buys you much.
Not anymore.
Laura, let's talk a little bit about this. You know that when you click around on the other channels, there's a lot of talk about Russia over the last month or so.
I haven't noticed.
Yeah, that's because we're busy on this channel doing all sorts of news. Well, Donald Trump took note of the fact that CNN got a story about Russian collusion with somebody in his kitchen cabinet really wrong. He tweeted this morning, wow, CNN had to retract big story on Russia with 3 employees forced to resign. What about all the other phony stories they do? Fake news. And he's talking about this story that linked Anthony Scaramucci to the Russians. They had to retract it. They only had one source. It turned out not to be accurate. What do you make of all that?
Remember all the journalists who continuously berate the president for raising the issue of fake news? I mean, they do it all the time. How dare he speak out against what these vaunted journalists are doing? Someone like an Eric Lichtblau used to write for the New York Times, and Lichtblau, who's now forced to resign. Look, he was a phenomenal journalist. You can't question him. Or Thomas Frank is another investigative journalist at CNN. Look at his track record. Look at what turns out. They were behind a story that was fraudulent and defamatory. I don't know why Scaramucci's deciding not to file a lawsuit against CNN. Maybe he just doesn't want to deal with the hassle of hiring lawyers. But it is a scandal that CNN allowed this to be published without the rigorous journalistic standards, which we believe.
Now they have standards. From here on in, we're going to have standards.
All right. So, but I would remind everybody that on Jeopardy a few years ago, Lichtblau, which is one of the reporters who resigned, obviously they were fired, Lichtblau admitted that he has been dogging Darrell Issa for years and had been exposed for bias by people like Newsbusters and so forth for years. And so this is not surprising. But Donald Trump has been right about a lot of the fake news. And this is just one story. Other stories have already been retracted, and they have been written and, quote, investigated by people who we are understanding to be serious journalists. What about the kids who just started at CNN? How's their track record holding up? So I think Donald Trump's right to be very frustrated with all of this.
I just wonder if they're going to hold on to the Russia story as long as they did the plane story.
Nobody cares, though.
Right.
All right, Laura Ingraham, great to see you. Thank you so much for your perspective.